They chose my golden brother over me. Now I'm rich, and they're homeless. My dad insisted that I show up to my so-called golden boy brother's wedding, even going so far as to threaten to pull my college tuition if I refused. They didn't expect the curveball I threw back. I told them I actually made more money than he did. That caught them off guard. See, in our family, I've always been the one who fades into the background, the one they barely notice. Meanwhile, my father practically worshipped my brother. The guy could do no wrong in his eyes. I still remember him telling me, "You know what? I don't care if you got into some fancy college. You're going to the local one. We can't have your brother feeling jealous." So, I played along. I told him, "Sure, Dad. That's fine. I'll go to the local school, on one condition. I want to live in the dorms." That was my cover. I lied straight to his face. I acted like I was living on campus at the local college, but I actually went to the prestigious university on a scholarship he knew nothing about. Eventually, when he finds out the truth, he's going to lose it. No doubt about that. But let me ask you something. What would you do if the very people who ignored you for 3 years suddenly expected you to show up for one day and pretend like you're part of the family again? Tough situation, right? That's how it is with my family. Always has been. Let me take you back to where it all began. My name's Ethan. And if you haven't figured it out yet, my family is seriously messed up. I'm serious. That is, if you can even call it a family. What do you call the people who brought you into this world only to toss you aside the moment they found a shinier, upgraded version of you? Can you really label that a family? Instead of dancing around the truth, let me just spell it out. I might have grown up in a loving household if my parents had bothered to treat both their kids the same. But nope. They were totally biased, and for as long as I can remember, I was nothing more than background noise to them, just because my brother Lucas happened to be the healthier one. Lucas was the kind of baby who made people stop in their tracks, bright eyes, big smile, the picture-perfect infant. Meanwhile, I was the scrawny, plain-looking kid no one rushed to pick up or coo over. And honestly, should that kind of surface-level difference really matter so much to parents? Of course not. But with my parents, Douglas and Sandra, it was a whole different story. Within just a few weeks of Lucas being born, he had already become the star of the show, their little golden boy, showered with constant praise and attention. And it's not like he was anything remarkable. He was just the cuter one. The one who stood center stage, while I was pushed to the sidelines, always the extra, never the lead. So yeah, you can probably imagine what that kind of childhood felt like. My parents didn't hate me, exactly. They just kept me fed, clothed, and otherwise invisible. And Lucas? He soaked up every ounce of attention and turned into a self-absorbed, entitled brat. That's the kind of dynamic we had. I was this quiet, reserved kid, kept to myself a lot, while Lucas grew into this loud, obnoxious jerk. Can you believe I was bullied by my own younger brother? Yeah, no joke. Lucas seemed to treat my misery like his personal mission. Whether he was throwing a fit that wrecked something I'd been looking forward to, or snatching away things that mattered to me just because he could, he always found a way to ruin my day. It was already a pretty miserable setup. Now add in 2 parents who clearly played favorites, and you start to get the full picture of just how rough my childhood really was. It's no mystery why Lucas turned out the way he did. My parents practically sculpted him into a spoiled brat. While he was drowning in shiny new toys, constant attention, and endless compliments, I was left with scraps. Nobody ever went out of their way to make me feel special. Birthdays? Just another day. Achievements? Barely a nod. Honestly, I felt like I was just there to fill space, like part of the scenery. I still remember this one time in 3rd grade, I had worked my tail off and ended up getting straight A's. I was so proud, thought maybe this time I'd get a little recognition. So I handed the report card to my mom, heart racing. She glanced at it and went, "That's good," before shifting gears completely and gushing about some crooked little dog drawing Lucas had slapped together. That thing ended up front and center on the fridge, like it belonged in a gallery. Meanwhile, my perfect report card? It got shoved into the junk drawer with coupons and old receipts. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I was the overlooked accomplishment, and Lucas. He could fart in glitter and they'd call it genius. And it didn't stop with schoolwork or birthday parties. Lucas called the shots on everything, where the family vacationed, what we had for dinner, what shows we watched. Anytime I dared to suggest something, it got dismissed without a second thought. Lucas made sure I knew who was in charge, too. He rubbed it in constantly, like he was some kind of royalty and I was just the hired help. It was unbearable. So, you can probably guess how badly I wanted out. I was desperate to get away from that place. And lucky for me, the right chance finally came along. I had big plans. I wanted to get my bachelor's degree and, by some miracle, landed a scholarship to one of the top universities in the world. I mean, this place wasn't just good, it was elite. The kind of school that practically guarantees you a solid future if you make it through. Earning a scholarship there. That was the kind of thing people dream about. But of course, there had to be a catch. The school was several states away. And true to form, my parents refused to let me take the opportunity. You want to know why? Yep, Lucas again. They had the nerve to suggest I stay local, insisting that the college nearby offered better prospects and more options. But I knew the truth, they were worried Lucas would feel inferior. Since he wasn't exactly academic material, they feared he might take it personally if I went off to some world-renowned school while he stayed behind. I mean, come on. What was stopping him from putting in the effort like I did? He could have studied hard, fought for scholarships, chased his own goals. But no, that logic never seemed to reach my parents. Instead, they told me I had to settle. You see how ridiculous that is? Deep down, I started to believe this wasn't really about college at all. I think they saw what I was capable of, but the idea of me outshining their precious Lucas. That just wasn't acceptable to them. Giving me real support would have messed with the narrative they'd built, Lucas as the golden child, and me stuck in the shadows. Why else would they push so hard to keep me close to home, while Lucas, who didn't even care about ambition, got everything handed to him? It felt like I was never supposed to climb higher than him. That wasn't in their plan. But did I just roll over and accept that? Not a chance. I'd already swallowed enough nonsense for the sake of keeping peace in this twisted, biased family dynamic. But eventually, I hit my limit. I told my parents I'd only agree to attend the local college if they let me live in the dorms on campus. They agreed, actually, they seemed a little too eager about it, probably thinking they'd successfully convinced me to give up my dream. But did I really give in? Not a chance. I took the scholarship and moved to another state while they went on believing I was just a short drive away, enrolled at the local school. And here's the kicker, the university I got into wasn't just prestigious, it also had the exact finance program I'd been aiming for, and it only took 2 years to complete. The local college would have dragged that out over 4. So yeah, that was a win. I ended up graduating sooner than they ever expected. Honestly, that was one of the smartest moves I've ever made. Not only did I escape the toxic mess my parents called home, but I also stepped right into a world full of opportunity. That school opened doors like nothing else. Just a short time after graduation, I landed a job with a 6-figure salary, and I've been there for a full year now. Things are actually looking up. I'm even on track for a promotion. And the best part? I did it all myself. The scholarship covered about 70% of the costs, and I used the money my dad was still sending, thinking I was studying at the local college, to cover the rest. Now, I'm living the good life. Yeah, my dad's still wiring me money every month, completely in the dark. And no, I haven't told him to stop. I get it, it might seem a little messed up. But honestly, I see it as a little payback for the years they spent holding me back. As for the rest of my family, let's just say I haven't exactly been keeping in touch. They'd check in once in a while with a phone call or show up during the holidays for a quick visit, just enough to keep up appearances and avoid raising any red flags. Other than that, they mostly left me alone, and I managed to steer clear of them by using schoolwork as an excuse. Not that they seemed to mind. Honestly, why would they? They had their golden boy now. With me out of the picture, they only had one child to focus on, and they were just fine with that. As far as I was concerned, it worked. Sure, there were moments when it stung that my own parents didn't even realize I'd moved out of state. But that sadness was usually drowned out by the peace of not having to deal with their toxic energy. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss the idea of family. Not my actual family, the chaos and dysfunction, but the kind where people care about you for real. Even with good friends and fun distractions around, there was this nagging emptiness I couldn't shake. Up until this morning, though, I didn't see that changing anytime soon. But then my dad called out of nowhere. He said Lucas was getting married and that I needed to come a few days early to help with the wedding prep. I was caught off guard. Was he really asking me to come back? I'd quietly dreamed of hearing something like that for years. And when he added that I was still family and he wanted everyone there for Lucas's big day, I actually got choked up. That kind of acknowledgement. I'd never gotten that from him before. Growing up, it was always just him, my mom, and Lucas. I was more of an afterthought than anything else. But now, for the first time in who knows how long, my dad actually asked me to be at the wedding. Hearing that from him, getting that bit of acknowledgement, was honestly overwhelming. Then reality kicked in. I had to remind myself who I was dealing with. These were the same people who practically pretended I didn't exist for most of my life. Even now, they don't seem to realize their oldest son packed up and moved to an entirely different state. So the question hit me hard, do I really want to go back there, just to be ignored all over again? That's the dilemma I've been stuck in. And honestly, I want to throw the question out to you, what would you do in my position? I miss the feeling of having a real family. It would be amazing to feel like they actually cared. But the idea of showing up and getting crushed again like every other time. That thought scares the hell out of me. So I had to decide, do I go to my brother's wedding just to keep the peace, just because we're technically family? Or do I honor the boundaries I've set and stay away from people who've hurt me for years? It's been a couple of days now, and I've had time to think it through. And here's what I landed on, I chose silence. Some of you might not agree with that, and that's fine. But I decided not to go. I turned down my dad's invitation to Lucas's wedding. And you know what? It genuinely feels like the best choice I've made in a long time. Spoiler alert, my parents haven't changed one bit, and I doubt they ever will. Now, picking up from where I left off in my original story, after sitting with everything for a while, I finally sent a short text to my dad. Nothing fancy. I just let him know I wouldn't be coming. No long explanation, no fake excuse. Just the truth, I wasn't going. I figured there might be some kind of response, maybe a little guilt-tripping. But I didn't expect the manipulation to start rolling in quite that fast. Not even an hour had passed before my phone started blowing up with messages. The first wave came from my mom, and right away, she leaned into the guilt. She asked if I really wanted to skip out on Lucas's big day, if I was okay being that brother. The one who lets everyone down. She added that Lucas would be heartbroken if I wasn't there to support him. Then she laid it on thicker, saying how much it would supposedly mean to him to have his older brother by his side. And of course, she dropped the classic, "You only get one family" line, like that's supposed to make everything okay. But here's the truth, I didn't care about Lucas's special day. Not even a little. Because Lucas had never shown up for any of mine, not birthdays, not achievements, not anything that mattered to me. And yeah, technically, you only get one family. Part 3. But that only holds water if your family actually treats you with respect. If they act like strangers or worse, then that card doesn't mean much. So I told my mom straight, I wasn't coming. When the guilt didn't work, my dad jumped in with his own brand of manipulation. At first, he kept it chill, throwing out stuff like, family should come together for moments like this. Trying the whole reasonable parent act. But when I didn't budge, he dropped the nice guy act and went for the low blow. He called and flat out said that if I didn't show up at Lucas's wedding, they'd stop covering my college tuition. Just like that. He even threw in that they didn't want to deal with the embarrassment of people gossiping about how one of their sons didn't bother to show up to a major family event. What they really wanted was to keep up the image of being one big happy family, at least in front of the neighbors and their friends. As usual, it was all about appearances. Not about me. Not even about Lucas, really. It was always about how the family looked to outsiders. That's when I truly hit my limit. I mean, how unbelievably selfish can someone be? Threatening to pull the plug on my education just to get me to show up for a wedding? It was ridiculous. Even more absurd considering I didn't care about the money they gave me. Not one bit. So I shot back at my dad, go for it. Stop paying for college. I'm not going to the wedding, and no threat you make is going to change that. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew, is that I had already graduated a year ago. I'd been living in another state, earning a six-figure salary, building a life they had no part in and could never have given me. I hadn't told them any of that yet. Not because I was scared, but because I didn't want them anywhere near what I'd built. They'd ruin it, the way they ruin everything. And sure, I know I'll have to tell them eventually. I will. Just, not yet. For now, I was enjoying myself. But my refusal to attend the wedding, even after all of his threats, set my dad off. He ranted about how ungrateful I was. How I'd always been the problem child. Then he tried to hit me with what he thought was his trump card, said he was going to withdraw me from the local college to teach me a lesson. He said it like it was supposed to shake me to my core, like yanking me from a college I had never set foot in would be some devastating punishment. The irony was too much. I couldn't help it, I just burst out laughing. I could have told my dad that I never actually enrolled at the local college, but where's the fun in that, right? So now, I'm just sitting back, waiting for him to march in and try to pull my name from a school I've never set foot in. What I'm really looking forward to is his face when he realizes I don't need his help or his money anymore. That's going to be one for the books. It's only a matter of time before he blows up my phone again, probably full of rage and colorful language. Honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to it. Anyway, I'll keep you all in the loop when it happens. But for now, that's all. Hey again, it's Ethan. Yeah, I know, it's only been a day since my last update, but man, the drama just keeps escalating. After that last conversation, I had this gut feeling my dad would take my refusal to go to Lucas's wedding seriously. Turns out, I was spot on. Everything kicked off with a call from him earlier this morning, and let me tell you, he was livid. Didn't even try to ease into it. Right off the bat, he demanded to know where I'd been all this time and what I'd done with all the money he'd been sending for my supposed tuition. It was like watching a toddler completely lose it after being told he couldn't have candy. Except, in this case, it was a grown man, my father, completely unraveling because things weren't going the way he expected. Apparently, after our last call, he actually drove over to the local college. And here's where it gets interesting. He went there with the full intention of withdrawing my name. You know, to teach me some kind of lesson. That man seriously believed that yanking me out of college would somehow guilt me into showing up at Lucas's wedding. Let me tell you, it was a wild miscalculation on his part. So when my dad marched over to the local college to try and pull me out, he was in for a rude awakening. The staff couldn't find a single trace of me in their system. I can only imagine the scene he caused when he realized I'd never even been enrolled there. He was probably standing there, trying to undo a registration that didn't exist, while the folks behind the counter gave him confused looks. I wish I could have seen his face when he realized Ethan had never set foot in that school. Must have felt like getting socked in the gut. Later, when we were on the phone, I could hear the sting in his voice. That brief moment of embarrassment clearly hit him hard. He came at me with all sorts of questions. Where had I been hiding the last 3 months? What had I done with all the money he'd been sending for my education? Honestly, the whole thing was so ridiculous I couldn't help but laugh. I let him rant for a bit, then decided it was time to lay it all out for him. I told him the truth. I'd graduated a year ago, thanks to a scholarship, and yeah, his financial support had helped with the rest. Then I hit him with the real shocker. I was now pulling in a 6-figure income, and I was actually earning more than he did. When he asked if I was messing with him, I could sense the letdown in his voice. But he quickly realized I wasn't joking. For him, it must have been a tough thing to accept, that I wasn't some broke college kid anymore, but a man with a solid job and a good life. At that point, I was fully prepared for whatever storm he was about to unleash next. The moment my dad realized what I'd just told him, he completely lost it. He blew up, accusing me of betraying the family by keeping them in the dark all this time. According to him, after everything he'd supposedly done for me, this was how I chose to repay him. Everything he'd done for me? Really? Was he referring to the years he and my mom spent pretending I didn't exist while showering Lucas with attention? Because if that's what he meant, then we had very different definitions of support. And then he dropped the most absurd thing I've ever heard. He said the only way he could ever forgive me was if I showed up at Lucas's wedding and helped keep the family's reputation clean. Apparently, avoiding gossip and saving face was more important than actually fixing our relationship. I was stunned. This man, who never once cared about appearances before, was suddenly obsessed with how our family looked to others. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I told him straight, I didn't need his forgiveness, and I sure wasn't going to help him keep up some fake family image. I wasn't interested in playing along with their make-believe story of unity. He kept trying to change my mind, clearly desperate at this point. But I stood firm. I said there was absolutely no chance I'd attend the wedding of the person who played a big part in ruining my childhood. And more than that, I told him I was done. With all of it. With them. He was stunned, but I wasn't finished. I told him I'd spent most of my life biting my tongue and enduring the silence, but that time was over. I made it clear, I didn't want to hear from any of them again. They could celebrate their perfect son without me while I lived my life on my own terms. Even after that, he tried to guilt-trip me. Tried tugging at emotional strings like he always had. But this time, I wasn't going to put up with it. He started going on about how I was still his son and how it was my duty to show up at my brother's wedding. But I'd reached my limit. I told him straight up that, as far as I was concerned, he only had one son, Lucas, the one they all seemed to prioritize. If that's how they wanted it, they could go right ahead and stick with him. I didn't even wait for him to respond. I hung up without a second thought and blocked his number on my phone. That was the moment I officially cut myself off from their toxic influence. It's a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, it stings more than I expected. I never thought things would reach this point. But on the other hand, there's a weird sense of peace, almost like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. It needed to happen. Now I can finally breathe, maybe even think about building something of my own someday, a healthy, loving family. It's been over a month now since I broke all contact with them. I truly believed I was done with the drama and manipulation. But of course, they couldn't just let it end quietly. A few days back, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. To my shock, it was my mom on the other end, and she was in tears, completely hysterical. I had blocked every number linked to them, so I honestly have no idea how this one slipped through. Still, something told me not to hang up right away. I had a gut feeling something serious had happened. But it turned out to be nothing like I expected. My mom started saying how much she missed me, how all she wanted was her son back in her life. She said she didn't care what had happened between me and Dad. None of that mattered to her anymore. All she wanted was for me to come back and be part of the family again. I was caught off guard. I mean, where was all this emotion before? When I told them I was done, they didn't seem to lose a minute of sleep over it. And now, suddenly, Mom's acting like she's desperate to fix things. It felt fishy. Something about it just didn't sit right with me. So I ended the call, saying I'd reach out later. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So I reached out to my aunt, Mom's sister, to see if she had any idea what was going on. And what she told me? It was wild. Honestly, it confirmed everything I had suspected. Turns out, Lucas's wedding had gone completely off the rails. It wasn't just a mess, it was a full-blown disaster. His picture-perfect fiancée turned out to be a professional scammer. Before the big day, she managed to convince Lucas, my parents, and even a handful of other relatives to sink their savings into this so-called once-in-a-lifetime investment deal. And yep, you guessed it, it was all a con. She vanished with the money, just like that. No wedding ever happened. She's disappeared, and so has every last dollar my family poured into that scam. But that wasn't the whole story. My aunt also let me in on something even more serious. Turns out, my parents were in deeper trouble than I ever imagined. Apparently, my dad got into it with one of his employees and their family, causing a scene that led to a major financial hit for his already struggling business. That's when it all started making sense. Now I knew why he was suddenly so desperate to have me at the wedding. He wasn't trying to mend anything, he just wanted to play the part of the proud father in front of a crowd. He was hoping to restore his image by showing off a picture-perfect family and pretending everything was fine. But that backfired, especially after the whole scandal with Lucas's fiancée exploded. So yeah, things were falling apart on all fronts. Money was bleeding out fast, and to top it off, they had used their house as collateral to take out a loan, some last-ditch effort to save the business. But that plan crashed and burned, too. Now they're facing the very real possibility of losing the house. In fact, they had to downsize big time, moving into some rundown trailer or tiny studio, the only thing they could afford. And just like that, everything became crystal clear. My mom didn't call because she missed me. She wasn't trying to reconnect out of love. They were sinking and needed a lifeline. They saw I was doing all right for myself and figured I could be their safety net. That's when the whole picture came together. They had run out of choices, and like it or not, I was the only option left. But I wasn't about to get pulled into that nonsense. There was no way I was letting myself get dragged back into their chaos, not after I finally saw things for what they really were. The truth was simple, I didn't matter to them. Not really. They were too wrapped up in Lucas and all his demands to even notice me. But here's the twist. Now my folks are going head-to-head with Lucas. They're pointing fingers at him for every single thing, especially the wedding disaster. They're blaming him for blowing through all that money, and honestly, it's kind of hilarious. The same golden boy they practically built their whole world around. Yeah, he's the one who wrecked it all. And you know what? I found a weird kind of satisfaction in watching them finally wake up to the damage they helped cause. At this point, I couldn't care less. I'm steering clear of their drama. After my mom tried calling, I blocked her again. I wasn't about to let her yank me around emotionally. But did that stop them from trying to get in touch? Of course not. Desperate and clingy as ever, they just couldn't handle the idea that things weren't going their way. So what did they do? They showed up at my doorstep. Don't ask me how they found my place. I've got a strong hunch they pestered some of my old friends until someone finally gave in. But honestly, how they managed to find me didn't really matter. What mattered was that they stood there at my doorstep, preaching about family values and how, as their oldest son, I somehow still fell under their umbrella of responsibility, and now, magically, they had become mine. Naturally, I shut the door in their faces. They pleaded with me, said they were flat broke, and had spent their very last dime just to fly out and see me. That was rough, for them. But I wasn't about to jump in and save them. Not my circus, not my monkeys. And it didn't stop there. A couple days later, Lucas showed up on my doorstep, practically in tears, begging for help. He went on and on about how much he missed having his big brother around. Which, frankly, confused me, because the only version of our relationship I remember is him pushing me around and treating me like dirt. I warned him to back off, but he kept at it. Said Mom and Dad were furious with him and threatening to cut him off, blaming him for the mess they were in. I didn't care. He could join them in their downfall for all I was concerned. I shut the door in his face too and told him straight up, if any of them tried this again, I'd get the authorities involved. And that was the last I heard from any of them. Truthfully, I haven't missed them. I've cut myself off from that toxic mess for good. That said, I won't lie, there's a part of me that's sad things had to end up like this. That empty space they left behind. Yeah, I feel it. It's there. But I'm not about to keep swallowing their garbage just because we share the same bloodline. Thank you for watching, subscribe to hear more interesting stories.